Okay, so last project I did a large portrait of an elf. I got an awesome model into the studio, Jade, to pose, and it went amazing. I was only really planning on doing one painting from this studio shoot, but we got so many epic shots. I had to do a few. I had to do this heroic portrait, but also a larger composition, which we're gonna bang out today, which was my original plan. So certainly go check out that last video if you haven't seen it. It's some of my best work. And here she is in all of her glory, hanging on the studio wall in my art studio that I'm so lucky to have. You know, every dollar I've made in the last 2 years has pretty much directly gone into paying for the monthly rent of this studio and the upkeep. And there's no sponsor for today's video. So if you want to support me, you could go buy a print on my website, souluniverse.com. I have merchandise, really high quality hoodies, and it would be directly supporting me and the things I do here in the studio. And all I love to do is make things and make videos about me making those things. So during that last photo shoot, we got these full body poses. That was my original intention in order to then later composite Jade the elf into a scene and environment. And I was totally inspired specifically by these two photos that I randomly found scrolling on Instagram. But also I wanted to get, you know, that super high fantasy epicness that Michael Whalen endows with all of his work, one of my favorite artists. And unlike a lot of my other projects, I actually wanted a true background. And so while fiddling around on Photoshop trying to compose this scene and environment, which I didn't know yet, I also slowly carved out this sort of brief and simple narrative of this queen elf and what, you know, the sort of story behind the image was gonna be. And trying to stick with more traditional lore, this elven queen was of the forest, so I wanted to incorporate a bit more nature into this composition and had the idea of Jade holding some sort of plant or flower.
Oh, love.
Like a crazy, like, I don't know, like metropolis. Yeah. So I think a white flower might just be very neutral.
I don't think green will look bad.
Well, I'm literally just gonna be like chopping your arm off here. Did you find an elf name you liked?
I think I love the name Elise.
The reshoot went terrific. We got all the stuff I wanted, you know, just replacing that arm and having this beautiful little vine to bring some nature into the scene. And I frockin' finally finished the composite on Photoshop, which took forever, but it was worth it because that is the creation of the painting, right? That is the painting, the digital sort of idea that I'm gonna be using as reference. Not 100%, but pretty darn close. And my next step was to create and prep my painting surface. And I know it's been like 4 minutes in this video and we're just getting here, but if you're new around the channel, that's what I like to do, be as in-depth and fun throughout the entire process as possible, delivering directly to your eyeballs. You know, so dropping a like and subscribing actually goes a long way in supporting my channel. The format of this composited reference was really strange and large. The end result was something like 22 by 36 inches. I'm using a piece of masonite, which I really love to paint on, and pretty much making the most complex hardboard holder to slot into my French cleats known to human existence. But again, literally any excuse to build something, I'm gonna do it with an ear-to-ear smile. And although I did struggle with this, it ended up working quite well and gave myself a super sturdy painting setup. Gridding was the next tedious task and endeavor, and it was slow going. I used a 2-inch grid and slowly sketched out the major shapes and mass of my queen elf. This is why I don't grid as much. I'd rather use a projector in this setting for something this complex, obviously, of course, because it's hard as shite, you know, it takes a long time. It's kind of like doing the double work because I just did it with pencil. The pencil doesn't even look that good. I know everything is pretty much in the right place, I'm almost positive, but it looks like chicken scratch. And so I'm gonna go over now with paint to sort of solidify that original outline and even perhaps bring just a little value in, like sort of like a burnt umber wash, just to show some value relationships. And I went a little overboard, with the full underpainting. I think sometimes underpaintings are overkill, but for this big scene and large formatted composition and painting, I thought it would be a good idea to sort of do the extra work, get as familiar as I can with my values and how things are in relation with each other. It's just more XP within the beginning stages. I'm using a lot of liquid and mixing it with odorless mineral spirits to thin down my burnt sienna a lot. And then once that's sort of on as a flat value, in the middle, I smudge it away with Q-tips. That thin paint can just be taken off really nicely with Q-tips, and that gives me a nice light value. And then I'll go back in with some thicker burnt sienna, less thinned down with those mediums, and that becomes a darker value for the shadows and whatnot. So it's a pretty straightforward system here. It's absolutely not perfect in terms of the value of structure for this whole painting, but it's more just a simplified roadmap to major shapes and mass for myself moving forward. And it's nice to kind of see something on the canvas finally, right? Like it's alive. We could kind of see the composition on the painting surface. I'm sticking with this sort of traditional formulaic approach. I don't always do underpaintings, but it's really kind of nice to kind of see what you're working with. So much work to do. This is only, I don't know, maybe 15% complete, this project. We're gonna start chipping away with some color, big masses, and just continually building on what we have down, kind of split this painting up into different zones. And the 3 zones we have, or zones in general, just in my mind, I like to break down complex sort of scenes into manageable pieces. So I've kind of determined 3 zones for this painting. It's very rational if you think about it. We got the foreground, which is the arch, the stone work, and the ground she's standing on, Queen Elise Jade. The background, which is the sky and the mountains, that's zone 2. And then obviously Jade, Queen, the subject is another zone. So these are just different sections to work on in different layers, different painting sessions. Again, just different palettes to mix to, so it kind of just helps my brain, especially with a larger painting like this. Also, when you're working in layers, different layers need different drying times and whatnot, so it's just something to help me keep moving forward. A plan. And actually these beginning stages with color are quite challenging for me, I think, because of the mixing of color, which I do think I'm actually pretty good at observing. But when you take photos and then have it like composited on the computer, sometimes your values can get kind of skewed, especially when you're just referring to a LCD monitor or something. The contrast is sometimes off. So I always spend a long time actually on the palette mixing colors, but that's part of layer 1, this first layer, just get something down, whether it's successful or not, and then you're only able to change it once there's something down. So that's the main agenda. Just like this sky blue, it's like drab and it's just flatted. It's the correct value and hue perhaps, but I'm gonna add certainly things later, referring to that to the future layers. And I was actually really excited about these mountains, the background. I really never get to paint landscape, and I super love landscape painting and really look up to amazing painters like Andrew Tischler, who can convey just this immense atmospheric depth, these crazy valleys or mountains in the background. It's like really impressive and amazing, and I never get to paint like this, so I'm really excited. Hopefully I can nail it. Again, this is like very simplified and just kind of getting some values and layers down, and I was pretty confident with Jade, Queen Elise here, because I painted her previously in the last painting. Her silk dress is super complex, but I already did that, so I'm pretty confident nailing all the reflections and things moving forward. And so we're done sort of with this first layer, and you could certainly call this the ugly painting stage, sort of a wide used term in the painting community, especially for a large layered complex sort of formula we're working with here. But it's just like a flat layer. It's just flat. Everything looks flat and drab. There's color and value, mediumly in the right places, right? Let's hope. It's just looking bland. That's fine. It's hard to get past that because you're like, oh, I put so much work in, but you know that there's way more layers, there's way more panache. It's kind of like building a house. You know, this is such like a cliche thing, but you know, this is the foundation, the first layer, structure, you know, mass, shape. Obviously there's stuff down, but you need the insulation, the electricity, all the walls, a roof. So all these new things that we're gonna bring into the second layer, texture, you know, higher highlights, darker darks, blah, blah, blah. So we're set up hopefully well with this first layer, and we're gonna just keep on crushing it. So the painting is touch dry. It's been sitting here for about 4 days, haven't touched it, fully dry. I'm about to do something wacky with this straight burnt umber, no mediums, just straight from the tube. Burnt umber is generally slightly transparent, so I'm gonna work in some weird glazes. I've never done this before, but you know, darken the archway and the subject, the elf, with some burnt umber, rub away the excess so I can kind of finesse and control, making things darker. That way also I'll just be adding more paint to the surface to layer lighter paint afterward. I think it's gonna work. I'm kind of nervous. I don't really know. That's the fun of these big projects, mix and matching different techniques. We'll see. It's time for layer 2.5. So 2.5 layer, it's just an in-between layer kind of to just remodel the face a little after those glazes. I try to break it down for you guys in really easy processes like stage 1 or layer 1, 2, 3, but really there's like, a certain amount of layers that I don't even know have a number, but I love talking about process, so that's why I try to break it down. This is that was definitely the second layer of the face. And we're oiling out the whole body to do the second real layer of the body, but I guess I said 2.5 because the body, the subject, the elf, she gets, you know, a little more layers than the foreground and background. But anyways, you know, I actually started this painting in June of 2022. You probably saw it in the background of a lot of videos or in Instagram stories. But now it's, you know, January of 2023. It's kind of crazy. I've never really procrastinated that hard. And that's because I put so much value into this painting, so much love, and the idea in my mind, you know, is almost on a pedestal. And when that happens, you know, there's nerves that go into it. When you mess up or you don't like how things are going, you know, it kind of paralyzes me. And this is a great example. I wasn't happy with the background, and I just tried to do something wacky. And, you know, that little time lapse was sort of like, you know, a whole night of painting, you know, 4 or 5 hours trying to do this different affect, and it didn't go well. And so I'm scared to finish, and I would do layers. You know, these layers in this one video are, you know, weeks and weeks and months apart. And I let it dry for weeks, and then I oil back out and do a little layer again. And then, you know, that on top of all the other craziness. It's been a really busy season during the holiday season. I had other obligations and, you know, with projects. But I really disliked actually how long I approached and spent on this. You know, I loved looking at it and I was really excited, but I was just paralyzed to actually finish and just put in the time and the work to just finish, you know. But that's just sort of ranty talk. I finally am picking back up again, and I guess the first month I did a lot of work, and then I did little things here and there and here and there, and then the last, you know, December I did a lot of work, and January now, which this portion of the painting is in, I did a lot of work, and it was a bunch of work to redo that background, you know, because I did it, and then I tried this new style. I wanted this rainbow effect, and then it completely kind of messed up the flow of everything, and I had to do like almost 2 layers to get this smooth oil painted background that's very just like a gradient on top of, you know, painting over the pillars and, you know, doing the final layers of the subject. It was just a lot to redo. literally so close to finishing this painting. This might be the last painting session on this behemoth. It's been like over 6 months. I can't believe it, but I'm pretty ready for it to be done because I have so many other awesome projects I want to start. But I got to remember to still be patient, take my time, finish this last sort of layer, the background, this landscape, add some more details, make sure that I'm really taking my time and holding myself to the highest quality to the very last step. So yeah, these last layers, I was actually really excited about. You know, part of the reason I procrastinated so much because I was worrying about the future, how the painting was turning out. A lot of, you know, painters go through the ugly painting stage. I talk about it all the time. And the more time you waste thinking about the little things you need to fix, the more, they mount in your head. And I was just looking at this painting, giant, ambitious painting, being like, oh, I have so much to fix. But once I got into it these last few weeks, I was so amped and so excited. I fixed all the things I wanted to. I added detail where I wanted to, all my values. I was just really amped and really proud of myself. And you just want to keep going. It's this weird sort of perpetual doom and perpetual stokedness that I kind of ride. And seeing it off of this weird ass kind of like canvas holder, I was super amped because I was kind of annoyed the whole time also looking at this masonite board with that little fenced holder. But here she is, really amped. Like I said, I think it's just probably one of the best paintings I've ever done. I mean, for sure the longest I've ever spent, but sort of having this narrative and having all of this stuff, I was quite excited. And it also just means I can move on to more awesome projects, but this one's in the bag. And, I saw it through, even though it was disgusting, the sort of procrastination paralysis I had. But it's always nice to be done with the project. So maybe you learned something. Maybe you were entertained. I really appreciate if you stayed to the end. I got a little announcement, Easter egg surprise, not really. I actually have in the works 7 or 8 of these really large scale oil paintings. And for each of these more narrative forward driven character stories and paintings around some sort of fantastical motif, I guess you could say, I'm writing a short story. So I've already written a short story for this painting, and I have many more planned, and then hopefully by next summer I will have enough work to make a gallery show and then also create an art book with all the stories that I wrote. I love writing. I'm trying to get into writing more. So that's that. And that's sort of the social contract I'm making for myself, putting it in this video. Not everyone sticks to the end, so that's that. See you in the next video.